lights up so you can see people. There's actually people here. That's just like this.
Hey everybody.
Hi. Excellent film. Excellent film.
Thank you for sticking around. Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions for the director?
I walked into this late. Where was this shot?
This was shot in Cleveland, Ohio, which is where I'm at right now. And obviously the story takes place in Buffalo. We wanted to shoot in Buffalo, but, for me to be able to make the film at hometown, because I lived at my parents' house, and I got my friends to help me out, and that sort of thing. And the main investor, film locally based, he could be around it. So, we shot it here to match Buffalo. I've been to Buffalo a bunch of times as a kid. We'd always go to Niagara Falls like every other year for some reason. And I found them similar in a few ways, obviously very different cities, but in some regards similar. And Mike Knight, the author of the book, agreed to it. So that's where we shot, and that's where we did it.
Why did you choose Buffalo as a setting?
This story is based off of a novel, and Michael Muhammad Knight lived in Buffalo, hence writing about Buffalo. And I think it's appropriate for the story because it's obviously Buffalo is not like the Wild West in which the characters dream of, this sort of utopic punk scene out west, and that's sort of tapping into the whole sort of mythology of the Western frontier and how things are better out there, dreams come true, California dreaming, blah, blah, blah. So the fact that it's in a city where sort of, it's not a big city, but it's known to like create its own culture or, be proud of itself, I found it very fitting for these characters to be based there and for them to, try to bring Taqwacores to where they live and sort of live by their own means and do their own thing, even though it wasn't necessarily present for them to begin with.
How long did it take you to go from the actual book to the film? Like, how long was that process to get it adapted for screen?
Well, it was relatively quickly, actually, because, when you compare it to how long these things can take sometimes. In '07, I read the book in early '07. I fell in love with it. It, floored me. Michael Knight and I met in the summer of '07. He gave me the rights to make it into a film. A year of sort of developing it, and by '08 we were actually filming, and then a year of editing, and we launched it at Sundance in 2010. 2010. So that last Sundance, not this past one, the one before it. And it's been on tour since, and so it hasn't necessarily been. Sometimes these things take way longer, but I had someone interested in. A few people interested in sort of helping me out in my first film, via my short films. So that's why the process was rather quickly. Once I picked something and I was very excited about it, they came on board.
What's the role? I noticed in the credits that you had, it said Roar Records. Did you hear me?
What's that?
I noticed in the credits it said, you had part in the credits as Roar Records, ROIR Records. What's the relevance of that?
Roar Records?
Yes.
Yes, they're the publisher for the Big Takeover. So that song we used at the end of the film is a Bad Brain song.
Okay.
And they're the company that gave us the permission to use the song.
Then I'm going to ask them, what was your choice of using that? Because Bad Brains kind of cross a lot of borders as well. And sort of what you're kind of talking about in this film is crossing a lot of borders.
Yeah, the love song, it's about, if you follow it lyrically, it's not the tone of it is more what we liked and matched to it. But it's sort of about how assimilation is not an easy thing, and it's likely sort of a difficult thing to achieve or whatever. And, our song, that moment in the film is like these people trying to come together, and obviously there's a tragic ending. And, people always ask me about that ending, what we're trying to say by that. Can you have coexistence? Can that work, for example? And, the hope is yes, you can, but at the same time, throughout history, the reality is sort of things, there's always dark moments in that struggle. So, not to say that they can't exist, but the reality is that there's, wherever think tragedies can happen in the mix of things. Anyway, that song, we just liked it a lot. And number one, of the tone, it sort of had its own narrative. It really matched the narrative of the scene. It was weird. We used it at first just to as something to try out, and then we kept, as we went along, we're like, how can we replace the song? It's just so good, and and we're really happy that the Bad Brains let us use it, and yeah, we're cool with it.
How did that scene with the author in the movie come up? Why do you guys do that?
Oh, you mean Michael Knight's cameo?
Yeah.
Well, in the novel, there's a guy called Old Nancy Taqwacores Punk who shows up at the party. He's a really awkward old guy, just starts rambling and scares the crap out of Yusuf. And I like that a lot because it showed that it wasn't just another party. Like, it was Taqwacores had come. It had officially arrived, and they're experiencing it. And it wasn't, it's not pretty. It's sort of gets ugly. So I really like that scene. And we tried out different people, and then, Mike, I thought it would be cool for Mike to do a cameo in the film. He liked that character, obviously he wrote it, and he liked the scene, and, tried it out, and it worked really well. I thought it was fantastic, and, definitely it's that scene sometimes that I notice where people, they might walk out of the film and during that scene. Yeah, it's so bizarre and awkward and weird that it's mostly conservative Muslims, they just can't stand that scene. So it's still it was still important for me to have it in there to show an extreme side of the talk war thing happening. It's like someone's trying to message me.
You mentioned the conservative Muslim reaction, but what about the really die-hard punk religion and punk culture can't coexist response that you might have experienced with the film and what it's trying to say as far as
That's a great question. We get, as with the Muslim side of things, I never know what I'm going to get. I'll get a woman that you might think is very conservative, comes to me praising him and really enjoying the film. And so with the punk side of things, I'll have people that say outright, this is not punk, you cannot mix religion and punk, and other people going, more on the older side, people who've been through it all, who've seen it all, they're going wow, this is one of the most punk things I've ever seen. For example, Alternative Tentacles, the label that Jello Biafra, Dead Kennedys, they're the ones who first launched the book, and the guy who sort of oversees the company now, he loved the movie. He came out to Sundance to celebrate it with us, and other people from the punk community have done that. And at the same time, there's people who just don't buy it. So it's across the board. Anytime you do anything, making a punk film, that in itself is not punk. You spend lots of money, to make something that's, that's a big piece of art. Rather, people on a stage just going at it on a mic. So, that's the kind of conversation you start having, and it's always a good conversation because then you get into, well, what is punk? What does it really mean? What does it stand for to you? It means this to me, and it's a never-ending conversation. So, like I said, we get it across the board, and we sort of welcome it, good or bad.
So what do you have to say about it? I read some pretty rough reviews about it from punk scenes that it is mutually exclusive. One of the few things that you can say about punks around the world is they reject social structures, especially religion. So the whole idea of trying to assimilate your religion into a punk culture is kind of ridiculous. I read that going into the film, and then I watched the film, but how do you respond?
I mean, it's one of those things where, like within context, you can look at punk itself. I mean, if you just say this is what
There are
punk
no
is,
Jewish
and
punk fans,
like,
and there are no Christian punk fans.
So
no. Well, this is a difference between like a Christian punk band and a Muslim punk thing. Hold on, let me word myself correctly here. This challenges. It doesn't necessarily celebrate the orthodoxy of religion. It challenges a religion, and the only way you could challenge it, in a way that punk allows it to be like sort of flipped on top of its head. So without the punk element, it's hard to do the things we did with the religion that we did in this movie. So we used like the laws and rules of punk to sort of look at something differently. Now, is it precisely punk in what your definition is? No. I mean, it's clear that you don't agree with it. But other people do, and there's no one punk community where there's no rules saying this is punk and this is not. I've had people, tell me things across the board. So I do the same thing with Muslims telling me this is not a Muslim film. This is outrageous to Islam. And then some people saying, this actually gets to the point of Islam. This is right at the heart of it. The character with the red mohawk, his relationship with a deity, with a god. If you notice in the film, it goes back and forth. He's saying things as if though he does, and there's times where he doesn't. So, I think whether you want to place a divine entity or some sort of other, cosmic spiritual thing, like the whole point of this thing is that there's something above you, I think, versus just like there's God and believe in the tenets of religion and so forth like that. So, I don't know. Like you're not on this. I mean, I don't know. I can't answer that question without like.
The movie wouldn't have worked without the whole punk thing aspect in it, because the way the characters are based, it's like they're fighting against themselves, basically.
Yeah, I mean, that's again, it's like how if you do the things we did with Islam without a punk sort of lens, you get in trouble, because then it just becomes offensive and it becomes, a mockery or humiliation. But because punk is actually, that's the thing, people outside of punk perceive it as just people being, stupid, anarchists and so forth. And some people believe punk is equal to anarchy, and some people believe that. Like they don't necessarily always go hand in hand. Sometimes, yes, anarchy is needed to reach a place that of independence of thought or whatever. But sometimes anarchy isn't necessarily needed to achieve sort of an understanding of something. So I don't know. If we do this film in a way without using punk, then we don't get away with exploring things that we do kind of thing. So.